I never expected her to remember my name, let alone the way I take my tea. It was an ordinary Thursday. I'd gone to Adil's house after work, like I'd done 100 times before. His place had that lived-in warmth. Muted TV noise, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint smell of cardamom drifting from the kitchen. I used to like being there because it felt like something was always happening, even if nothing really was. Adil wasn't home yet. He'd texted, 5 minutes, bro, which usually meant 20. So I waited. I sat at the dining table, scrolling through my phone, pretending I had messages to answer. I opened a chat window, typed half a sentence, erased it, locked the screen, unlocked it again. The clock above the doorway ticked louder than it should have. Then she walked in. "Hi, Umar," she said, like she'd been expecting me. His mother, Sadia Ani, mid-40s, maybe a little more. I never asked. She wasn't dressed like she was trying to impress anyone. Just a loose sweater, sleeves pushed to her elbows, reading glasses resting low on her nose. She had flour on one hand. She wiped it absent-mindedly against a dish towel. "You're early." "Or he's late," she added. "He's on his way," I said, sitting up straighter than necessary. She smiled. Not wide, just enough to acknowledge the effort. "I made tea. You still take it without sugar, right?" That part made me look up. "Yeah," I said. "Still." She nodded once, like she'd confirmed something important, and disappeared back into the kitchen. I watched her hands when she returned. I don't know why. Maybe because they were steady. Maybe because she held the tray like she trusted it not to shake. She placed the cup in front of me carefully, aligning the handle toward my right hand without asking. "Careful. It's hot." Our fingers almost touched. Almost. "Thanks," I said, and immediately felt like I'd said it too softly. She didn't sit at first. She leaned against the counter across from me, arms folded loosely. Not closed off, just resting. "You look tired," she said. "Long day." She tilted her head slightly. "You always say that." I let out a small breath that could have been a laugh. "I guess I do." Silence stretched between us. Not awkward exactly, just noticeable. The kind where you suddenly become aware of the ticking clock again. I picked up the napkin under the cup and folded it in half. Then in half again. I didn't know why. She noticed. "You don't have to wait here, you know," she said. "It'll probably be a while." "It's fine," I replied quickly. Too quickly. She studied me for a second. Not invasive, just observant. Like she was piecing together something she wasn't saying out loud. "You can sit in the lounge," she offered. "Or help me with this dough, if you're bored." "I'm not bored." Another pause. "Okay," she said gently. "The thing is, I didn't come there just for a deal anymore. I told myself I did. But lately, I'd started timing my visits around when she'd usually be home. I noticed which days she wore her hair down instead of tied back. I noticed she always hummed when she was distracted. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a lightning strike. It was smaller than that. It was how she remembered things. How she asked questions and actually waited for the answer. How she looked at me like I wasn't just someone passing through her son's life. My phone buzzed in my hand. "Adil. Bro. Can't make it. Emergency at work. Saw the..." I stared at the message for a second too long. She must have sensed the shift. "He's not coming, is he?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. There was a beat where either of us could have ended it there. I could have stood up, said I'd come back another time. Instead, she said, almost casually, "Well, you're already here." And for a moment, I wasn't sure if she meant the house or something else. She didn't move when I stood up. "Do you want me to go?" I asked, already reaching for my jacket. She looked at the door, then back at me. "You can, if that's why you were here." It wasn't. I hesitated just long enough to make it obvious. She exhaled through her nose, not amused, not annoyed, just aware. "I still have dough to finish," she said, "unless you're scared of flour." "I'm not scared of flour." "Good. Wash your hands." The kitchen light was warmer than the dining area. Closer. The counter space wasn't built for two people to stand side by side, but we made it work. My elbow brushed hers once. I stepped back too fast. "Relax," she murmured, pressing the dough flat with her palm. "It's just roti." I watched her hands again. The rhythm of them. Firm, practiced movements. She handed me a smaller piece. "Try." I copied what she did. Mine came out uneven, lopsided at the edges. She glanced at it. That's ambitious. I laughed under my breath. You don't have to lie. I wasn't, she said. Then softer, it's fine. You'll get better. Something about the way she said it made it feel like she wasn't talking about the dough. We worked in quiet for a while. The fan hummed overhead. A motorbike passed outside. Somewhere in the house, the washing machine clicked into another cycle. You don't talk much, she said eventually. Eat dough. She raised an eyebrow. When I need to. And when do you need to? I didn't have an answer for that. She dusted her hands off and leaned back against the counter again, studying me in that careful way she had. Adil says you don't go out much anymore. He says that. He notices things. I swallowed. There's not much to go out for. That was too honest. I looked down at the dough in my hands. She didn't push. She just nodded once, like she understood more than I'd said. I used to think that too, she said after a moment. I glanced up. After my divorce, she added plainly. No drama, just a fact placed gently between us. You get used to not expecting much from people. It's quieter that way. I didn't know what to say, so I said the first thing that came to mind. That sounds lonely. She gave a small smile. It's efficient. We both knew that wasn't true. The word divorce hung in the air longer than it should have. I imagined her younger, married, someone else standing where I was standing. The thought made something tighten in my chest, something that wasn't mine to feel. This was my best friend's mother. I was standing in her kitchen, flour on my hands, noticing the way the kitchen light caught in her hair. There are lines you don't cross, lines you don't even step near. I stepped closer. Why'd you really stay? She asked quietly. The question landed somewhere deeper than I expected. I shrugged, but it felt weak. I like being here. She held my gaze. Didn't smile this time. That's dangerous, she said. For who? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached over and brushed a streak of flour from my cheek with her thumb. It was quick, practical, almost automatic. But her hand lingered half a second too long. Neither of us moved. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. And maybe because I knew we both wished she hadn't. After that night, I told myself I wouldn't go over as often, which would have been easier if she hadn't started texting. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing that would look strange if someone else read it. Adil left his charger again. If you see him, do you still prefer that T brand? You forgot your jacket. I hadn't forgotten my jacket. I went back for it 2 days later. She opened the door like she'd been expecting me, though she didn't say that. Just stepped aside and let me in. The house was quieter than usual. No TV. No kitchen noise. Adil. I asked. Library, she said. Midterms. Of course. She handed me the jacket. Our fingers brushed again. This time neither of us pretended it didn't. You could have just sent it with him, I said. I could have. Silence. I slipped the jacket on, even though I wasn't cold. It smelled faintly like her detergent. Or maybe I imagined that. I shouldn't stay, I added. You're still here, she replied. That did something to my chest. We ended up in a lounge this time. Opposite ends of the same couch, at first. A safe distance. The ceiling fan made a soft clicking sound every rotation. I counted 3 before she spoke. You've been quiet. I'm always quiet. No, she said gently. This is different. I stared at my hands. Picked at a loose thread on my sleeve. I stopped. Started again. I don't want to make things weird. Her jaw tightened slightly. Not offended. Guarded. Are they weird? She asked. I looked at her then. Really looked. Yes, I said. She nodded once, slow. Good. That wasn't the answer I expected. Good. I repeated. It means you're thinking. I let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. That's not comforting. It's not supposed to be. There was again that line she walked so carefully. Close enough to feel. Far enough to deny. A car door slammed outside. We both turned our heads toward the window at the same time. Too quickly. Like children caught doing something wrong, even though we hadn't. Headlights flashed briefly across the wall. It's not him, she said after a second, quieter now. But she shifted anyway. Sat a little straighter. Put space between us. I felt it immediately. That pullback. That reminder. You're his friend, she added, almost to herself. I know. And she didn't finish. His mother. Older. Supposed to know better. The words hung there without being said. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. Tell me to stop coming. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she studied my face like she was memorizing it. Or maybe searching for something. Recklessness, maybe. Immaturity. A reason to dismiss this as nothing. You think this is about you? She asked softly. The question hit harder than it should have. I don't know what this is, I admitted. That was the most honest thing I'd said. Her hand moved before I think she meant it to. Rested briefly over mine. Not gripping. Just there. Warm. Steady. I looked at her mouth. Then her eyes. Then back again. She noticed. Her breath shifted just slightly. For a second, the room narrowed. The ticking fan. The air between us. The fact that if I leaned in, she pulled her hand away first. Umar, she said, barely above a whisper. Not angry. Not inviting. A warning. And I realized we weren't afraid of being caught. We were afraid of not stopping. I stopped going over. Not dramatically. Not with a message or a decision announced out loud. I just slowed down. Let Adil's text sit unanswered for a few hours. Found excuses. Work. Headaches. Next week, bro. He noticed. You good? He asked one afternoon outside campus, squinting at me like I was a puzzle missing a piece. Yeah. You've been weird. I'm always weird. He laughed, but didn't fully land. Emmy asked about you. My throat tightened at that. Oh, she said you forgot your thermos. I hadn't. I nodded like that made sense. That evening, I went back. I told myself it was to return things to normal, to prove I could sit in that house and feel nothing unusual, that I was in control of something. She was in the front yard when I arrived, watering the plants. Early sunset, the sky that pale orange that makes everything look softer than it is. She saw me before I spoke. You remember the gate, she said. I've been here before. Yes, she replied quietly. You have. I noticed she didn't smile. Adil wasn't home again. Group study. The universe had a sense of humor. We ended up walking down the street without really deciding to. Just side by side on the uneven pavement. Not touching. Not far apart either. You've been busy, she said after a while. Something like that. That's not an answer. I exhaled. I thought maybe some space would help. Help what? The question was calm. Too calm. I kicked a small stone off the sidewalk. Watched it skid ahead of us. You said this was dangerous. And you believed me. Yes. She stopped walking. I took 2 more steps before realizing and turning back. There was something different in her face now. Not softness. Not distance. Something closer to hurt. I meant dangerous for you, she said. The words landed slower than I expected. For me, I asked. You're 23. She said plainly. Not dismissive. Just factual. You think you know what you're choosing. You don't. And you do. I know what it costs. Silence stretched between us. A car passed. Somewhere the dog barked. You don't get to decide that for me, I said, more firmly than I felt. Her jaw tightened. There it was, the crack in her composure. This isn't a movie, she said. There's no version of this where someone doesn't get hurt. Maybe I'm okay with that. She looked at me then. Really looked. Like she was trying to see if I understood the weight of what I was saying. You say that now, she murmured. But one day you'll want someone uncomplicated. Someone your mother can invite over without explanations. And I'll be. She stopped herself. You'll be what? I asked quietly. Her voice thinned just slightly. A mistake you made when you were lonely. That did it. I'm not lonely because I don't have options, I said. I'm lonely because no one. I cut myself off. Because no one sees me like you do. The words hovered there, unfinished but obvious. Her breathing shifted. She stepped closer without meaning to. Close enough that I could see the faint line between her brows when she was thinking too hard. Umar, she began. Not a warning this time. A plea. My hand lifted before I decided to lift it. Hovered near her waist. Not touching. Just close enough to feel the heat from her skin through the fabric. If I walk away now, I said, my voice barely steady, is that what you want? She didn't answer, and the silence felt like a question neither of us was ready to survive. She stepped back first. Not dramatically. Not like she was afraid of me. Just enough to let the air back in between us. I have to tell you something, she said. I almost smiled. I thought maybe this was it. The part where she admitted she felt it too. Where the silence would finally choose a side. Instead, She looked past me, toward the end of the street. My ex-husband is coming back, she said. The words didn't land all at once. Back, I repeated. You got a job here. It's temporary. She folded her arms loosely, like she was bracing against wind that wasn't there. He'll be around more. For a deal. Oh, that was all I had. It doesn't mean anything, she added quickly. Then slower, more honest, it might mean something. The ground felt uneven under my feet. You didn't mention that before. You didn't ask. That's not fair. No, she agreed softly. It isn't. We stood there, suspended between explanations and accusations neither of us had the right to make. Are you getting back together? I asked. Her mouth opened slightly. Closed again. I don't know. That was worse than yes. Hope flickered somewhere in my chest, stupid, reflexive. Then doubt washed over it just as fast. I imagined him in that house again, sitting at the table where I'd folded napkins into smaller and smaller squares, standing in the kitchen where she'd brushed flour from my cheek. I hated that it bothered me. You're jealous, she said, not unkindly. I'm not. You are. I looked away. I don't get to be. That's not the same thing. That's silence again. Heavier this time. For what it's worth, she added, I didn't expect you to matter. The sentence felt unfinished, like she'd chosen the safest possible ending. And now, I asked. She hesitated. Now I have to think about my son, she said. There it was. Not him. Not herself. A deal. The line neither of us could pretend wasn't there anymore. I would never hurt him, I said. I know, you don't sound convinced. I'm not convinced I wouldn't. That landed deeper than anything else. We walked back toward the house without speaking. The sky had darkened fully now. Porch lights flickered on along the street. At the gate, she stopped. You should go home, she said. Not cold, not distant, just careful. I nodded. For a second, it felt like she might say something else, like she might reach for my hand the way she had before. She didn't. I walked away without looking back. I told myself that was strength. That was dignity. That was adulthood. My phone buzzed halfway down the block. Her name. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit in my palm like something fragile. When I finally did, it was just 3 words. Be patient. Please. I stared at the typing bar beneath it. Watched it blink. I typed, I don't know how to be patient with you. Deleted it. Typed, I'll wait. Deleted that too. In the end, I locked my phone and slipped it into my pocket. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. Behind me, her porch light stayed on long after I turned the corner, and I didn't know if that meant anything at all. I didn't reply to her message that night, or to the next morning. By afternoon, I convinced myself that silence was mature, that giving her space was generous, that wanting less was the same as wanting wisely. Around 7 p.m., there was a knock on my apartment door. Not loud, just steady. I knew it was her before I opened it. She stood there in the same sweater from the other evening, hair tied back this time. No muck-up, no performance, just her. I was nearby, she said. She wasn't. I stepped aside. My apartment was smaller than her kitchen, a couch too big for the room, a sink with one unwashed mug in it. I suddenly saw it the way she must have. Temporary. In between. You didn't reply, she said. I didn't know what to say. That's never stopped you before. I let out a breath that almost passed for a laugh. You make it harder. She nodded like she accepted that. We stood there for a second too long before I gestured toward the couch. She sat. I stayed standing. You shouldn't be here, I said. I know. My neighbors. I don't care about your neighbors. That's not what I meant. Silence. She looked around the room slowly. Not judging, just observing. The same way she had in her kitchen, in her yard, on that street. I met him for coffee, she said. My chest tightened. Your ex. Yes. And we talked about a deal. About schedules. About how strange it feels to sit across from someone who used to know everything about you. I swallowed. Did it feel familiar? She thought about that. No, she said finally. It felt finished. Something inside me shifted. Not relief exactly. More like air returning to a room that had been sealed too long. But that's not the point, she added. Then what is? She looked at me then. Not past me. Not through me. At me. The point is that I don't get to use you as a reminder that I'm still wanted. The words were steady, measured. I never felt used, I said. You would. Eventually. I walked to the window, then back again. There wasn't enough space in the room to pace properly. I'm not a distraction, I said quietly. I know. Then why are you pushing me away? Her composure cracked just slightly. Because I like you, she said. It wasn't dramatic. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She just said it. And that makes me reckless. The room felt smaller. I don't need you to protect me from your feelings, I said. I'm not protecting you. A pause. I'm protecting the version of you that hasn't had to explain this to anyone yet. That landed heavier than anything before it. I sat down across from her. I don't care who has to know, I said. I care about what this is. And what is it? She asked softly. I held her gaze. It's not loneliness, I said. It's you. The air between us shifted again. Thinner now. Honest. She leaned forward slightly, close enough that I could see the uncertainty she'd been carrying alone. This could cost us things, she whispered. I know. A deal. I know. Her hand moved slowly this time. Deliberate. She placed it over mine. Not hovering. Not accidental. There was weight to it. If we do this, she said, we do it carefully. I nodded. And if we don't? I asked. She searched my face like she was memorizing the answer before giving it. Then we stop before we ruin something we can't repair. Another silence. Then, almost barely there, she said, okay. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't surrender. Just okay. And for the first time, the pause felt like a choice. Part 7. The conclusion, we didn't rush. That was the first rule. For a while, nothing changed on the outside. I still came over as Adil's friend. We still sat at opposite ends of the couch when he was around. She still called me Beta in front of relatives like the word had never shifted shape. But under that, something steadier was building. We told Adil 3 months later. Not dramatically. Not all at once. It started with longer glances he noticed. The way I stayed after he left the room. The way she didn't pretend not to look at me anymore. One evening, at exactly 8:47 p.m., I remember because the microwave clock blinked as the power flickered. He looked between us and said, okay, what's going on? Silence. The honest kind. She spoke first. Calm. Measured. No excuses. I care about him, she said. Adil stared at me like he was recalculating something. Not angry. Not yet. For how long? He asked. Long enough, I said. There were weeks after that where everything felt fragile. Conversations that stretched thin, doors that closed a little too firmly. I gave him space. He took it. But time, actual time, not dramatic time, did what it does. He saw that I wasn't a phase, that I still showed up, that I still argued with him about football and borrowed his hoodies and forgot to return his books. And he saw that she laughed more. Not louder, just easier. Now, a year later, the routines are different. I don't wait in the dining room anymore. I walk straight into the kitchen. She still makes tea without sugar for me. I still pretend it surprises me that she remembers. Sometimes we sit on that same quiet street bench where everything almost broke open, not to relive it, just because it's on the way back from the grocery store. She'll nudge my shoulder lightly and say, you were very dramatic here. I wasn't dramatic. You paced. I was thinking. She smiles at that, the small, knowing one. There are still moments when the world feels aware of us. At family gatherings, in public places where someone does the math too quickly. But we don't flinch the way we used to. It isn't reckless anymore. It isn't paused. It's chosen. Some mornings, I wake up before her and make black coffee for myself, tea for her. I leave the cup on the bedside table, handle turned toward her right hand. She always notices. You aligned it, she murmurs, half asleep. Of course I did. The loneliness I used to carry isn't gone in a dramatic way. It just doesn't echo anymore. We didn't explode into each other. We adjusted. Carefully. Imperfectly. Honestly. And sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the clock ticks louder than it should, she'll look at me like she did that first evening. Flower on her hands, something unspoken between us, and ask, you're still here. And I'll say, yeah. Not as a question. Not as a challenge, just as a fact we both worked for. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet Real love stories do you want to hear next?